Hello, everyone. Welcome to Abnormal Investigations. We got a pretty crazy one ready tonight. I've been looking pretty forward to looking into this one. We're going to look deep into what are these things, where do they come from, and Travis Carpenter is going to be here with us tonight talking about the DNA Project, explaining kind of, I guess, the journey that was taken to show exactly where we believe these things to come from. It's going to be an exciting show. I think we're all going to learn a lot tonight. Of course, his dad, Scott Carpenter, I believe, was on the cutting edge of what these were, and I believe he proved what they were. Looks like we got the AI mod in there tonight. Keith Blunt's in there. Nancy. Seen a lot of familiar faces in there tonight. Good to see you guys. Let me go ahead and throw Jesse in here real quick.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Was trying to get a hold of Randy. I don't know if Randy's going to be joining us tonight or not. He wasn't for sure, so he may show up late.
Okay.
And again, trying not to cough my head off tonight. That seems to be the fun part.
Yeah.
But I told everybody it looks like we're going to learn a lot tonight. I learned a lot just watching those videos. And
made me mad too.
Yeah, it could be infuriating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Scott on. Or Scott. I keep getting him and his dad so confused. Travis on.
Travis.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey, it's all good, buddy. How are you doing tonight, man?
Doing good. How are you, Travis?
Hey, buddy.
Travis.
I'm good. Hey, can you guys hear me halfway decent?
Yeah.
Awesome. Man, shoot. It's funny you said, you guys are going to learn a whole lot. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that is a tall task to ask me to teach anyone anything." So, I want to make that clear. And it's funny, like, I started this journey, like the Truth Denied, and like I hope you guys know that it is also like a journey for me too. Dad had taught me a ton of things, but just getting into the nitty gritty, the details, like you look at this and it's like, man, Dad went through exorbitant lengths to tell people what happened here.
Yes.
It's not just his opinion. It is like research what happened over and over again. And it's and the funny thing is, like, I understand where Dad was coming from now. Is how people are still will argue that Bigfoot doesn't exist, is like we have so much proof that Bigfoot exists. Not only that, we have so much DNA evidence to prove what it is.
Right.
Completely ignored.
Right.
But we can get right into it. But I just find it really strange, not strange, but ever since I started this and ever since you contacted me, man, the spiritual warfare has come upon me in the last month, man. I don't know about you guys. I know you've been sick, and I mean, Jesse, you know what's happened kind of in my hometown. It's been rough.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's Go ahead.
No, go ahead. We got a small delay. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that spiritual warfare and investigating all this stuff is kind of hand in hand. There's no getting around it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I definitely think that.
I'll be right back. I'm having some technical difficulties, guys. I'll be right back. One moment, please.
You're good, Randy. And I know you've been sick, and man, that whole sickness has been rough. Not to be that weird, of course we're down the rabbit hole tonight already. Not to be that conspiracy guy, but man, I know everyone I know is sick with this thing. Everyone.
Yeah.
It is. It's rough. And I think that this, for some reason, this genre, it has a darkness that follows it. I've even told Jesse, if I would have known back whenever everybody told me, go on and tell everybody what you lived through, what, happened at your granny's. And if I would have known that that journey would have took me to where I went through, I don't know that I would have ever have done it. I do two pages kind of like you do. I do an outdoor, and it's like whenever I do my outdoor videos, it's so much more relaxing, so much more enjoyable. It seems so much lighter, and like, it feels more like life. To where this, this has that.
I feel
It
like we're
doesn't
going into
matter how
battle
much
every time, man.
Yeah, it's like it don't matter how much proof you have, you're going to be attacked. And it doesn't matter how much time you put into it, how much you prepare. It's if it doesn't meet somebody's agenda or I always call it their truth, not
That's
the truth, but their truth. And then they try to discredit you and attack you. And it makes it difficult to want to pursue it. It makes it to where you finally get to the point you're like, do you all want the truth or do you want a scary story?
That's a lot of people I think may just want a scary story, but we're going to get into like a ton of it tonight. Well, I can start wherever you guys want to, and just go. You ask and I'll tell.
Wherever you want to start, you're going to know a lot more about this. Like you talk about the mitochondria and the nuclear and all that.
Yeah.
We spoke about that whenever I was in school, and I was like, oh, this is like going back to school again. I'm going to be totally lost now.
It is. So let's get into the crux of it. Like, a lot of people will say, okay, this Bigfoot DNA supposedly about this study was hoaxed or is hoaxed. And one of the things that kind of debunks that hoaxing, and I hate to get so in the weeds just right off the bat, is the difference between that mitochondrial DNA and the nuclear DNA. That is the main reason or issue with this whole study. So for those who don't know, and again, I am not a biologist, none of us are, but we do know how to read textbooks and we know how to do that. The mitochondria of a cell is the outside of the cell. I think we all remember that. The mitochondria holds DNA from the mother, okay? That's usually really easy to get when you're doing a DNA sequence of something, when you're trying to figure out what it is. So very easy to get the mitochondrial DNA. Well, when you have a hybrid that we believe the Bigfoot is, you also have to get what's known as the nuclear DNA. The nuclear DNA is a little bit harder to get. It's in the nucleus of the cell, which is the center of it. And that DNA is from the father. In this entire study, what they ended up finding was the mitochondrial DNA was from, tons of it was from like a haploid group H, but it was all 100% human, not 95%, not 97%. The mitochondrial DNA was human. So everyone thought this is human contamination. They're looking at this hair and they're saying this isn't human hair because you've got veterinarians looking at this, and veterinarians, here's the thing, they know what dog hair looks like, they know what cat hair looks like, they know what human hair looks like, and this isn't human hair, but it's coming back human DNA of that mitochondrial. So everyone's thinking, oh, it's been contaminated. It's contaminated. Well, when you look at that nuclear DNA, when they do a little bit more research and do that nuclear DNA, they ran it up against what's known as GenBank. GenBank is a database of millions of DNA profiles of both animal and human. And when it was ran up against that in GenBank, there was no match for that nuclear DNA. So what that means is you have a human and unknown hybrid of something. Now, that's That's okay if that were just one set of DNA, okay, one set or one sample of DNA. This happened over multiples, 30, 40 samples of DNA from all across the country. This happened. So this is not just some Scott Carpenter made this up. This isn't some Melba Ketchum just made this up or Dave Pilates just pulled this out of his rear end. This is hardcore, real DNA stuff. Now, we know from the last 4 years that it does not matter really what science says. It's what the scientists or what the people in charge want it to say. And we have to understand that about science. It's not only the data, but it's in the interpretation of the data that also matters. And if you have an agenda and that data doesn't fit that agenda, you can then ignore that data. And that's seemingly what it has, the gatekeeping in the scientific community.
Right.
Does that that's the overview of what's going on in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was noticing too, was people don't understand that DNA testing is such an absolute that it's used in so much crime investigations that it, is used for where we would use, the death penalty. It's a very trusted method. It's a very proven method. It's if your DNA is there, then you was there. Nobody questions that.
That's exactly right.
Well, and it's odd that people even nowadays would even question. More and more. They're sending their own DNA in for testing all the time. 23andMe and whatever other DNA, genealogy research that they've done, and they come back, things that they never even realized. So how is there such a discrepancy when it comes to the research that Melba and your dad had done too?
I think it's just I think what Dad is going to get into is the fact that Bigfoot is not a big hairy ape, is not an animal. DNA wise, that comes for a lot of people's sacred cows. That really shocks and rocks the Bigfoot world, because if it is a human hybrid, then that, in my opinion, that proves the Bible.
Yeah.
That proves it. That proves the Bible true. Then then you have to deal with, okay, we've got a human hybrid race running around, cohabitating our national parks. What do we do about that? It's a bigger puddle of mud than they want to get into. So just deny it. Just deny it and ignore it. It is what usually happens. But I wanted to get into, like I said, I'm going to get into the weeds, so please stop me at any point. A lot of people will say, or a good example is like, hey, this was faked by like this one woman, like a woman or something like that could have faked it. Here is a good excerpt from that. Let's see. So they had some first results, and I just kind of want to read this out loud, if that's okay. So some of the first results of this study. In the early days of the study, the team dynamic was extremely fluid. The results were being analyzed, and new revelations occurred almost daily. The study started with 3 samples, so they had 3 different samples of this Bigfoot DNA. The two most important samples for the study in the early part were sample 1 and sample 2. Sample 1 had been from a toenail found in a Bigfoot habituation site in northwestern Arizona, and sample 2 was a blood and tissue sample collected in Kentucky. Analysis of these 2 samples were, kind of like I said, the aha. Basically, sample 1 had 2 polymorphisms, while sample 2 had 3. Various mitochondrial DNA sequences shown that along the x-axis are examples. I don't know what that means. Most likely, these two specimens, widely separated within North America, share the same mitochondrial Eve, which is very, very interesting, who probably existed somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 years ago, based on the number of mutations and polymorphisms present in their mitochondrial genomes. So this mitochondrial Eve was most likely a European origin, from haplop group H, from the so-called Cantabrian glacial refuge. There's a lot of going on here, but basically the odds of a random hoax or misidentification of either sample 1 or sample 2 are like 2% or less statistically. The two purported Sasquatch samples were not physically connected whatsoever. Rather, they are obtained from two disproportionate groups and individuals from two widely separated geographic locations within the continental United States during 2009. Thus, the odds of either being a hoax or misidentification are less than 2 to 3% conservatively. So, like, it's so, even if they tried to make this a hoax, it's statistically so hard to even do. Is what I guess that is saying. There's just it's really, really hard. The next thing I wanted to say is when they studied the nuclear DNA. So let's say that the nuclear DNA, they were like, oh well, they didn't do it right. It was human. Let's get into that for just a second. Okay. This is basically from an excerpt from Todd Distol, who's an anthropologist from NYU. Todd Distol is a perfect example of the bias and the intolerance of this study has faced from the beginning. Distol was involved in a 2009 in testing a flesh blood sample from the Erickson Project from a red female Sasquatch, which was later included in the Sasquatch Genome Project study. Distol analyzed only the mitochondrial DNA from the sample. It's sample 37. If you guys want to go look at sample 37 in the Sasquatch Genome Project study, and found it had modern human mitochondrial DNA in the H haplop group. So we've talked about it. It's red. It's going to be a red female, and it's going to be human of that mitochondrial DNA. Distol assumed that this represented human contamination. So he threw it out and the sample away, which obviously outraged leaders of the Erickson Project, who basically came before the Sasquatch Genome Project. The mitochondrial DNA result was confirmed by Paleo Labs, DNA Diagnostics, 2 other labs which studied the sample. So not just one person is saying that it's the mitochondrial DNA is human. Lots of people are. Right. But a DNA Diagnostics, the sample's nuclear DNA was tested, which confirmed it was from a female, and expressed the MCR1 gene for red hair color. No red-headed females were involved in the Erickson Project. When the sample's nuclear DNA was run on a human genome SMP array test at USC, it ran only 80%, well below the human threshold of 95%. Even the study's control, this is a control, so every study has a control to make sure that everything's, we learned about this in science, you have a control. So even the study's control degraded human blood sample, which had been purposely left to decay, ran at 97% human, indicating the low percentage on the sample 37 was caused by genetic differentiation and not by degradation. So basically, it's genetically different. It didn't degrade. It's genetically different. 80% is well below the 95% threshold for human DNA. So the nuclear DNA is not human.
Right.
So what does that mean? And that is the question that everyone has to, when they lay their head on the pillow at night, they have to really dig into that. What does it mean that you have a human and a non-human mix? What does that mean?
To me, it tells me that it was angelic, that it's something that we don't have on file, or at least not at our level. We don't have it, on our file. I believe that the elites know exactly what we're dealing with, but they're never going to admit it, because if they admit it, then they admit that the Bible is true, and
Absolutely.
they're not going to do that. That's the opposite direction that they want to go. But during the Erickson project, the one you're talking about, Melba Ketchum was still kind of, she wasn't really believing in a Bigfoot at that time either. So this is kind of where the paradigm kind of hit her, wasn't it? Where she started realizing, hey, we're dealing with something here that that may not be, the norm. And she started kind of, looking into, there's something going on here.
That's exactly right. So Melba
Well,
Ketch. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
I was going
Jess.
to say, and I just wanted to interject too, even if you were to, and I hate to take out the Bible and
You're fine.
God and everything, but even if you were to look at it strictly from a scientific basis, it is not something to have a hybrid created that long ago that could have been something that happened naturally. So it also brings into that question too, on a scientific level, there had to have been some type of manipulation with the genes, and where did that come from? So if
Yeah.
it was not through angelic beings, then what is that? The question is, how did that happen?
That is a great point. So I like where Jess is thinking and going with this too. So let's let's take that out of it. What like what is manipulating the genes? How is the genes being manipulated, and who and for what purpose?
Right.
So that you can be biblical and non-biblical with all those questions, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh yeah.
I'll get real in the weeds. If you it let's say it's not a Nephilim. Let's say that. Then you have this super soldier esque thing, or this chimera, which we know chimeras existed.
Right.
Like they've been talked about all through Greek mythology, and even mythology before the Greeks.
Right.
They're all talked about these chimera type of beings. So could it be something like that? Could Bigfoot be a chimera of some sort?
Mm-hmm.
Go on. You can't be
Yeah.
everywhere.
I think what hurts the the super soldier program is the ability to be able to do that as far back as people have had sightings with these creatures.
That makes sense. Yeah.
We didn't have the technology at that point to be able to replicate or to split DNA, or I mean, even today, they're able to do it, but on a very small scale as far as what we're able to splice and to be able to have what they call a functioning lifespan. So for these creatures to be able to do what they're doing in the wild, as long as they have done it in the wild, it brings me back to again, and I know we're trying to stay away from the biblical basis of it, but to me, whenever you look at it and you look at the sightings in the Bible, in the days of Noah, and even after Noah's, after the ark rested and he sent out the search party and they came back and they were like, but we're like grasshoppers to them. They're already here. They were
Mm-hmm.
before the flood and after the flood. And, people say, well, how did that happen? Well, God said everything outside of the ark perished in the flood. Land dwelling perished. But we know that back then, the things that lived in the ocean, the behemoth, those type of creatures, they wouldn't have drowned. That was their home. And I believe since the beginning, Satan knew the Messiah was going to be born. And there has been a battle for the seed ever since, to corrupt that seed, to stop that birth of the Messiah, because they thought, man, if we could only contaminate that seed, then Jesus couldn't be born.
Yep.
But what they didn't realize is God had already planned it out. He was going to do it himself to make sure that it was done perfectly. And he went, he just was he's above and beyond everything.
I'm a subscriber to that seed war type of person. I'm a big fan of Rob Skiba. I don't know if you guys had paid attention to him before he passed, but I was a big fan of him, and he did a great commentary on the seed war, and I'm a believer in that. I got a little bit different theory on how the Nephilim were before and after. My theory is, and I didn't come up with this, by the way, is Noah and his 3 sons were perfect human genome. Never says the wives are. So
right.
Remember how Noah cursed Cain, his grandson, and if you have that genome or that gene box, that 4, how that gene box works. It works out to, you can still, if you still have a little bit of Nephilim DNA in there, you can still start getting more Nephilim again. And it talks about Nimrod.
And I'm 100%.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And,
no,
and
I'm just right with
Nimrod,
you. And I know what you're saying is exactly what I've looked at.
So, but none of us really know.
Too was, right. It makes me even believe, people have argued with me whenever I told them, I said, what we may possibly be dealing with today is the Eliad, the descendant of the Nephilim. People are saying, well, the Nephilim aren't there. Well, the Nephilim are there, but they're a descendant of what was there at one time. I mean, you can take you can look at families like my dad, for instance. My dad was a very big man. He was 6'6", 350 pounds, big man. And my mom, she's average size. So I'm not, super big, super tall. Yeah. She had to put up with that. Can you imagine that? And, and I'm not that big, but then there's tall people in my family. And then you look at my cousin, his mom and dad were short, but that DNA was still in his mom of the larger family. And he's like 6'6". You can carry that hidden and be in your DNA like Noah's, sons as wives, and then they start procreating, and then the next thing you know, you're right back in the same mess you was in.
Yeah, and it even says like Nimrod claimed to be like 1/3, quote unquote, 1/3 God, 2/3 man, or something like that. And the what is it, the the number of the man is 666. Well, if you take 2/3 and 1/3, 2/3 man, 1/3 God, 2/3 man is I think 666. So I mean, there's so many rabbit trails you can go down with that, man. But I think at the end of the day, it is a seed war.
That's what I believe, and I believe your dad took it from, that's why I always followed your dad and believed what your dad did, because your dad took it from the aspect of people arguing over footprints, handprints, videos, photographs. Your dad said, okay, we're going to take it away from what people can argue, and we're going to do this scientifically, and we're going to prove the existence. And then whenever they done the Erickson project and they done the DNA studies, and then the DNA comes back and the DNA says, hey, we don't know what the father is here.
Yeah, that's,
that takes it out of that. You can't really base an opinion and say, well, that's not what that is. I mean, the facts speak for themselves. The facts are facts.
Exactly. So I wanted to get into this where I read chapter 4, where my dad kind of joined the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Genome Project. It didn't get a whole lot of views, but I thought it was very, very interesting. I didn't know if you guys had caught that, and had caught where, how many samples Dad had got, how we got those samples, and then where they actually came from in Dad's research, in all of it. Did you guys catch all that?
Yeah, I went back and watched, and I seen where he'd went on coast to coast, and they had done all their collecting and everything, and it was real interesting to me about the Erickson one. It was Kentucky, right? Is where it came from.
Yes, a lot of it came from that Kentucky one. The ones that Dad had actually got a chance to do, he got him and Dave Pilates had come up with that hair trap that I talked to you guys about. It's so simple. It's stupid simple. Where basically what they would do, for folks that don't know, for our listeners, what they would do is, Bigfoot DNA is hard to get out of the hair. So what you need is that hair kind of pulled out by the root. You need that skin tag. So they were like, well, how in the world do you get skin tag? And how do you get skin tag humanely? Well, they came up with a way to take packing tape, wrap it around a tree backwards, and get something that the Bigfoot would like, and get them to either lick it or grab it or whatnot. And they the thing that worked the best is, in the wintertime, Dad would literally just slap this bacon grease up on top of this tree, and they would lean up and get it. Well, that's not only where he got this. He got these things from his research area, which is where he's buried now, which many people, by the way, have had major experiences in that area, to include Les Stroud, Tony Merkel, David Pilates. A lot of people have had paranormal encounters and issues there. So I want to make that abundantly clear that area, very, very well-known people have had issues in that area, not just Dad.
Right.
And scientifically minded people, people that do not care about the paranormal whatsoever, they are 100% scientific basis, had issues there, and it freaked them out. So he got hair samples there. He got hair samples in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. But I think this is kind of even shocking to me. I didn't 100% know this. Dad got samples from his backyard, which does do the whole "they follow you home." So he used to talk about they would steal his dog food. They would go in and do that. Well, what they were doing is they were kind of stepping over the fence. They're basically straddling it. And what he did is he just wrapped some tape where he found the footprints, and wrapped the tape around that. So basically it worked, and he kind of got the hair kind of by the groin area, that got pulled out. And Dad had, let's see here. Dad had, how did he do this? Yeah, exactly. Like Jesse's now just thinking about it. Looks like Dad had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, had 12. Had 12 full samples in that, and they came out, and they were Sasquatch. They were of this unknown origin. He got you got Dad's house, Smoky Mountains, and Loudoun County in Tennessee. And I'll put up pictures like after this of all of that table of contents of what samples and where and all that stuff. But I thought that was pretty mind blowing.
Well,
and we
I
had a
think
guest too that had talked to me. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and I had a guest talking to me, and she wanted me to ask you, and I wasn't real familiar with this, but she said your dad had a bush or a tree or something at his home that it used to like to hide behind and watch him. and
So
she
yeah,
was wondering, did it hang out there even after your dad was gone? Does it still come up and bother you guys?
so that's a good question. So I didn't hang out at, once Dad passed away, I didn't hang out. I didn't hang out at Dad's house a ton. But I did have an interview with Tony Merkel there. Hopefully that'll come out in a project. And I don't know if you remember, Dad used to always talk about all the batteries literally would be 100% charged and they would go dead, or some like screwy things would happen. I mean, it probably has happened to you guys too. It's like you're perfectly fine, and then all your electronics just go dark. So we're all there, and I'm talking, 4 or 5 people. We've got 3 cameras, all that stuff, and we're all there, and then the cameras just go dead, like just about all of them. And I'm just sitting there laughing, like, yeah, they know we're here. They're screwing with us, and I think they still came around a little bit. I don't know how much, but I think they still came around a little bit.
Do you think they were angry with your dad?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that I think that when he found out what they truly were and prayed them away, they did not like that. They didn't like that at all. Because I personally think that they, or at least Dad thought that they are very narcissistic. They like a lot of them. And they're narcissistic when it comes to, even in their groups. So they want this, they like this whole worship of the Bigfoot, as in, oh, they're the keeper of the forest. They're these great things. They're all this. They, in my opinion, they like they like the attention of some sort. If that sounds so weird, because it's like, well, if they like the attention, just come out and show themselves. That's not part of the rules. So as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I think that they, like you said, they have rules, and they know that not everybody's going to believe what they are. So they focus on the people that are going out looking for them. They, or, they're kind of in the dry places, if you will. And they're like, hey, these people are coming out here trying to find us. We're not bothering them, but these people, these humans are so focused on us that they're coming out here and they're leaving us gifts and food, and they're calling us, these great people, and we take care of the forest. And then you get people saying, well, they're my friends, they follow me home and I have conversations with them. And I'm like, yeah, I think you're in real dangerous territory.
Yeah, you could definitely get there. I believe that too. I truly do.
Have you heard any of the stories about Elliot Mazzulli talking about the giants running into the Native American camps, grabbing a brave, popping his head off like a soda cap, and drinking his blood like a Coke?
Man, LA's wild. I haven't heard that story, but I don't doubt it. I love me some LA Marzulli.
I do too.
Oh,
his
yeah.
stories are fascinating, and so is his information.
Dude, LA's been deep in that mystical, magical, realm, way out in California. So like he knows, and for him to come out of that and become a Christian is, I mean, that's miracle stuff right there. So I think that's pretty cool.
God works in mysterious ways.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
So when your dad was going through all that, and your dad had found out what these creatures were, and he was doing the DNA, was anybody else involved in that project? Were they being attacked supernaturally, or was anything happening at their houses also?
Not that I'm aware of. Now, they may have been, but not that I'm personally aware of. So I can't make that statement. And I think I did say this on the last 2 episodes, that I can't. When I was at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot conference, a lady from Dad's neighborhood came up and said, I'm going to show you my ID. And I looked at it, I was like, oh, you live next to Dad. We talked a little bit, and I'm like, so, just from your perspective, you remember, these things happening in the neighborhood? She says, absolutely, I remember this. This happened. This was this was that. So it's not just Dad making up these stories, and sometimes I need those confirmations for myself too, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I went through the skepticism myself growing up, and Mom and everybody, living through it and seeing it, and you know, your dad, I think what really caught my attention was whenever he told people, "Don't go pursue these. Don't
Yeah.
pursue these." Because I remember, as a child, it was not fun. It was not, this adventure that we all, loved going down to Granny's, and something trying to get in the door, that just was not fun. And we would, me and my cousins, we would tell our parents, can we leave before dark? I don't want to be there at dark. I hated walking from that front door out to that circle drive. I hated that because you just were waiting for something to holler at you, something to whistle at you, something to do something stupid.
You're right.
And it would just scare you to death. I mean, and we called the law a few times, and the law, you was lucky if they ever showed up. I mean,
Right.
they would be like, oh yeah, well, we're busy, we'll be there when we can get there, just stay in the house, keep the doors locked, don't go outside. Well,
Yeah,
eventually,
that's
we just got to where you didn't even follow.
and that's definitely frustrating there. What did you guys think about the reading of the Sierra Kills, the first part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think your dad took it so literal, and he investigated so well that I don't see how anyone could call it a hoax. I mean,
Exactly.
it
What
it
what
it, it, it blows my mind.
I agree. For those in the chat
Ref-
that go ahead.
I was gonna say refresh me because I listened to everything a bunch of times, but I don't recall.
So the Sierra Kills. This is the latest reading. The Sierra Kills is basically that event that happened in October of 2010, where a bear hunter named Justin Samaja basically would shoot two purported Bigfoot, one adult, a male, along with one juvenile. And over time, there's been various versions of the story. But for everybody that doesn't know or hasn't ever heard of it, again, there's new folks to this all the time. Here is what, through Dad's research, Dad believes the facts are. Justin and the driver of a vehicle observed a Bigfoot standing in a small meadow approximately 80 yards from the road. The driver pulled over. Justin opened his door and aimed his rifle at the Bigfoot. The driver opened his door and looked at the Bigfoot. The driver told Justin not to shoot. It was not a bear, that it was, in fact, a Bigfoot. The Bigfoot was waving its hands above his head, almost as if to say, don't shoot. Justin shot the Bigfoot in the chest. The Bigfoot went down, then was able to stand up and retreat through the brush. Justin and the driver watched the wounded Bigfoot run into the thick forest. Justin and the driver went over to the area where the Bigfoot was shot to investigate. While investigating, two infant Bigfoot emerged from the woods. Justin shot one of the infants. He explained his motive as being fearful, but in later interviews, he said it was hunter bloodlust. Those are what my dad believed were the facts of that incident. And here's the thing. That incident was used to really discredit the study because they used samples from that kill those killings to use. And the thing is now you have a murder, if you believe it, if it's a human hybrid, now you have a murder. If it's not a human hybrid, then you still have a killing of a non-game animal in cold blood, which is still a felony in I believe in California. So once that happened, I I hate to say someone's dumb, but I don't think Justin is a smart guy. I just don't, and I think that once he found out, oh, I could be in some deep crap here, he really backtracked, really tried to discredit it, and just tried to say, oh, this is all fake, this is hoax. But according to the DNA, it ain't fake, it ain't hoaxed, and that that is that's just a hard thing to swallow sometimes. Is that this happened, and it's just reading more about it, reading some details about it. We'll get into it in the reading of chapter 2, but he admitted that it looked the infant, because he shot it and he's picking the infant up, and he said the infant looked like a mix between a little black boy and a chimpanzee, and just reading that irked me deep to my core. I don't it just irked me really bad.
Yeah.
So
And unfortunately, humans a lot of times are the type that they see something they don't understand, and instead of trying to figure it out, the first thing is, "Ew, shoot it." You know?
shoot it. And I've had personal reports to me, and I'm talking to me, and friends, they say they've seen one and they were hunting, and they were asked, why didn't you shoot it? And their response is, I don't know if it wasn't human or not. And that's what they say. And I think that, those hunters that see it and don't pull the trigger and don't ever tell anybody, like you could tell somebody, like you're not alone. You did the right thing by not pulling the trigger. You show great mercy. Just my opinion on that.
Yeah, because I've been in several situations to where, I could have shot what it was, and we, decided to give it its space and let it continue on. And then, another thing people don't think about too is when you're out there and you can shoot one of these creatures. If you shoot this creature and you don't kill it, you're dealing with a wounded creature, wounded animal, and how many other family members are there that just watched what you done?
Yeah.
And you're not, you're not on top of the food chain out there. These things have been there thousands of years. That all of a sudden they go from observing you to time to take you out.
Yep.
I would agree with you, Mike. When you enter the forest, you're in the bottom part of the food chain. You're on the menu when you enter the forest. My opinion.
Oh yeah, the forest is unforgiving. I mean, these things they live out there through hypothermia, shelter, food, day in, day out. These things are surviving. Each day to them is survival. They don't have the luxury of waking up, going to the ice box. They are hyper vigilant every second of every day. They still, they have to hunt. They have to stay out of the way of humans best they can. And with
Still
today's
have to raise
technology,
their kids and keep
Right.
their
oh yeah, I mean, today's technology, I can only imagine, the drones and the things, now that they're having to contend with, they're out trying to do their thing, and you've got humans everywhere, and then, they're going to shoot at you if they see you, I mean, that That could be a bad
With all the
situation,
knowledge,
especially.
all the cameras everywhere, and they still don't have proof that these things exist. Isn't that interesting?
I
Yeah,
think I'm of the belief, when it comes to these drones and stuff like that, I think these Bigfoot can see in the infrared spectrum. So when a drone's flying up, man, that thing's got lights on it. Like, it's going to be like, all right, hey, they got drones flying up there. There's, that thing's just absolutely blaring in the sky. You're not going to, you're going to find a place to hide. You're going to do whatever you need to do to hide away from it. And same thing with the trail cameras. Trail cameras are, in my opinion, the same way. They, if it's an infrared, man, those things, and they see infrared, it's like shining a flashlight in the woods. Like they
Yep.
know exactly where it's at. So, and Dad, Dad in his later books said, "Hey, that's a great way to keep them away from you. Put those trail cameras out. They ain't gonna mess with it."
Mm-hmm.
So, because the
and if
Erickson
you're,
project, I think is that the one? They also like invested a ton of money into those trail
Trail
cameras.
cams.
Yeah, and,
yeah,
and I don't think they came up with really anything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that they also can tell, by the lights that you're using, from a fisherman to a person that's out looking for them, because they're going to know that, okay, a fisherman's out there. He has a regular flashlight. He's got a lantern. He's not going to be bothering us. But then they look over at these other people and they're like, okay, these people are using infrared lights. They're using
something different
EMF
about
meters.
this.
Yeah, these people are they're looking for something else. They're
Lights duct
making
taped
art.
to their entire body.
Yeah, and we're out there making their calls. We're yelling at
Right.
them, and we're beating on trees, and we're mimicking them. So I think they start getting the idea that, hey, these people are looking for us.
Oh,
And your dad, that story you told about the wet footprints in the kitchen, that
that
when
that
they're in your house, that's a whole different.
I gotta hand it to my wife. She really had discernment. They and by the way, this goes on another thing. Like in today's society, they tell you not to trust your gut. Don't do this. Don't do that. That's bull crap. I'm trying not to cuss on your show. I'm sorry, Mike, but that's bull
Oh,
crap.
it's okay.
Like trust your gut. God
Mm-hmm.
gave you the gut, trust it. And women have the best daggum gut ever. And my wife, I'm telling you, she's like, Travis, don't mess with this stuff. Like, just don't. I don't want you going out with that. Your dad. Don't. I think it's just it's something weird. And man, like when Dad told us about those wet footprints and all that, she's like, I told you, I told you, and she just, man, you women know, Jess, you know how this works.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't always trust my gut like I should, but no, I get it.
But
When Sarah is with Mike on the boots on the ground, she often will warn Mike to stop. And when he don't, usually something bad happens to
Mm-hmm.
Mike.
yes, yeah, it's a good idea to keep Sarah around, and like Dad said, it's also good to have dogs around. Dogs,
Yeah,
dogs know. Dogs know.
yeah.
And,
I get into, sometimes I have to watch myself when I'm investigating, because working with law enforcement and security all my life, whenever you're on the trail of something and you have the mindset that you're hunting something, you're after something, and you're close to it, it's not in our genre to almost catch it and turn around and retreat. It's like whenever you almost have it, that's when you push harder. And I start getting those feelings of you're almost there. You're almost there. And I'll push myself further probably than what I should. But again, I feel like I know that threshold. I know what I can get away with. what I can't get away with. And they will let you know if you listen when it's time to quit. You know,
Right.
they will let you know, okay, this is too much. You're pushing me too hard. I'm not running no more. You know, if you really want to do this, then we're fixing to do this. And then it's like, okay, you know, he's had enough, because you'll start getting different sounds. I've noticed they'll go from the normal sounds to that, you know, when your mom or your dad would look at you and, you know, you start getting that more of a, I've had enough of this, you know.
Right.
It's not fun no more.
Mm-hmm.
And I smell licorice a lot. I've been smelling that a lot. Black licorice.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's been a few times now, and it smells just like somebody opened up black licorice. And it seems like as soon as I smell that, I'll start hearing the hoot owls. But you got the hoot owls, you know they're hoot owls. You know, you're like me, you're raised in the country, so you know what a hoot owl sounds like. And you'll hear that hoot owl, and you're like, oh, okay, you know, that's a hoot owl. But then you hear that one hoot owl, and you're like, you know, it catches your attention. You're like, and you know, you look at your friends, and you're like, did you hear that? And they're
Right.
like, that wasn't no hoot owl. You know,
Do you guys ever have those experiences, and that experience that you tell yourself, that was just this, but it won't, but you never forget it, and that experience like doesn't go away. So for me, like I've said, I've never experienced a Bigfoot. I've never, thank God, I've never had any issues. But I went out hunting with Dad at where he's buried at this place, and I had this fear of pure dread, just dread. And as I'm getting this fear of pure, like, I mean, just dread, like something screams at me, like a woman, like, and I'm like, well, maybe that was a crane, you know, because it's by water. I was like, maybe that's a crane, maybe that's a fox, maybe that's this, and it's still to this day bugs me because it's like, no, if it were a crane, it would have flew off. If it were a fox doesn't make that you know, it sounds crazy, but not like that. It's just, it never, it's never sit right with me. Because I remember getting up and yelling at it to go away. You know, and I said a few expletives as well.
oh
But
yeah,
but it it just still bugs me to this day. So, have you guys ever experienced something like that, where it's like you try to convince yourself it was something normal, and that really didn't happen?
yeah, yeah. Mine was I was probably 15. My mom and dad had bought me it was a 1979 Ford pickup truck, and we were going fishing, and I was riding in the back of the truck, and I would always ride in the back. Mom and dad were driving, and I was doing what I normally would do. You know, I'm looking out in the woods and riding in the back, excited to get there. And I look out off the side of the truck, and there's an old bridge, and there's like a hill that goes up. And I look over, and I see this thing. And the best way I can describe the color of it is the end of somebody's cigarette, that white with a little bit of black in it. It looked like an ash color. And it ran up the hill. And I remember when it ran up the hill, it reminded me of a feather duster back like in the 80s, you know, how they would move, how they would kind of like flow, that, you know, it looked like that while it was going up the hill. It had that flow to it, the whole thing. And I remember when we got around to the back bridge, I told mom and dad what I'd seen. And of course, I don't think they believed I seen it. That they believed in those things because they had lived, but I don't think they had thought that I'd really seen it. And when we were sitting there, we had just threw our poles out, and it screamed and jumped into the water and swam across the creek. And I remember Dad saying, okay, we're leaving. And they grabbed everything. We threw it in the truck and we left. And then later on, you know, you start thinking, maybe it was a coyote that I saw or a wolf. But then you get to thinking about it, and you're like, well, it couldn't have been, though, because it was running on two legs up a hill, you know. But then you keep saying, Well,
No, I
maybe
didn't see it like
you know,
that. Yeah.
yeah, maybe the heel made it seem like it was running on two legs because it was going up the hill, and you start trying to rationalize it because you want to go back down there because I was raised in the woods and that was part of what we done daily was go down there and hang out under the bridges and have bonfires and fish. And you didn't want to scare yourself, and say, I don't want to go back there because that's where you grew up. So you would try to make an explanation of it was a coyote, guys. We'll be all right. We can go back tonight, And then everybody shows up and everybody's on edge and they've brought their big deer rifles and the fire's bigger that night.
Yeah.
And everybody, they're all jumpy and
that seems awfully acting for it just being a coyote.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it can, but then there's places down there that I can go 9 times out of 10, feel comfortable, feel like I could camp there, feel like I could fish there all night long. And then I can go there one night and God, man, you can't even get peaceful feeling, you're just like, I shouldn't be here, or you're on edge the whole time. You can't even fish for like looking behind you, or, each little thing, I hate that feeling.
So where I hunt is around the lake, this lake, and this lake it has this trail that's cut in by the Tennessee Valley Authority, and basically all around this lake there's about a 50 to 100 yard barrier that's TVA land. So they've taken it from the land, the landowners. It's like, hey, this is this. So, but you can hike on that land, you can hunt on that land, and you can camp on that land. So it's a public. They wanted it for public use. So I hunt on this, and this is a very well established trail. People are on it all the time. And I remember, like you said, sometimes I'll be walking down there, no problem, cool as a cucumber, awesome. And then there's sometimes where I can't take a step forward, like I just physically can't. And it usually happens around this like rock, like I specifically remember like that, like rock faces. I remember Dad used to talk a lot about the rock, like rocks and all that stuff. And obviously, it being near water, there's a connection there of some sort. I don't know, but usually those two, there's some ingredients there.
So did that always happen in like the same general area, or was that like usually sometimes? I mean, was there anything with the time of day that you would be out there, or the seasons that you would be out there that would happen?
The 2 times that it happened, it was kind of during the day, kind of later on the day. I was usually squirrel hunting, and it would happen around this one specific area. It's like it's coming around a bend, and there's a rock face on the side, but it's it's very, very steep. So you've got the lake, you've got the trail, and you've got this really steep rock face, and it just scared me. As stupid as this sounds, that rock scared the crap out of me. And I'd have to kind of almost tell myself, I'd stop, I'd look around, I'd say, y'all go on, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I don't want to mess with you. Get the heck out of here. I'm praying you away. And then I'd just go on. As I know, and that sounds nuts to folks who've never had an experience or haven't had their, for me, had my dad in this. So I say all that to say, like, I've never physically seen one. I don't want to, but you kind of know they're there. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But time of day is 10 o'clock.
I got mad
around
at myself.
in the fall.
Okay.
I done it in the daytime and got mad at myself. I wasn't even out doing an investigation. I was with my son. We'd went fishing, and we were sitting there fishing, and there's this trail that ran down the side of the river. And I noticed the trail, and I was like, hey, buddy, I'm going to go walk down this trail just a little ways. And it was where I could see him. He would always be in sight. And I walked just a little ways from him, and man, and this is daytime. This is like 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I just got this overwhelming, like, I didn't even want to be there. I mean, I went back and I told him, I said, let's go fish somewhere else, buddy. And he was like, well, Dad, we just got here. And I said, yeah, but how about we go to that other spot you like? And the whole time I'm loading the tackle box and his poles and stuff, and he's sitting there eating donuts I'd bought him. I felt like anytime something was going to happen. And I just loaded up and left. Whenever when I'd have the kids with me, I didn't hang around. If I had that feeling, I was just like, let's go somewhere else. But it was daytime. I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything. It was that feeling. It was like, man, there's something close, it was, it's hard to explain, but it was, I felt real uncomfortable. Like I was not supposed to be there that morning. And it is kind of a secluded little place where we went. You have to drive down this steep little hill, and there was nobody else there. And you are beside the river on the river bottoms. And it was just like that feeling that something was coming up that river. And that river, it's where what happened at Granny's, that's where it came from, was that same river. Because my uncle was down there being goofy. He was, monster hunting with his girlfriend, and they had that encounter. And after they had that encounter, Grandma could not get rid of it. And that's what I try to tell people. You think it's fun to go out and look for this thing, and it is fun until you find it and it comes home. Because when they come home with you, they don't just like bother you at night. They don't just slap on your doors. They don't just slap on your windows. My mom one night, for instance, and I think that if her sister wouldn't have seen it this night, I think my mom would have got hurt. They had an old Mustang set down at my granny's. It sat right alongside of the fence, and the fence had honeysuckle grew all over the fence. This old car hadn't ran in a long time, but it was sitting there. And my mom, it was time for her to come down and switch a sister to take care of my granny that had had a stroke. And back then, we didn't have cell phones. So the rule was, if you pull in the driveway, something's going on, they would flicker the porch light. And that was your sign not to get out in the dark and come up to the house, to leave. So my aunt was sitting in the front room, and my mom pulled in, and my mom pulled up behind that car, and my mom had her headlights on, and she's getting her, her stuff ready for the night, getting her duffel bag and all that. And my aunt's looking out the picture glass window, looking at my mom, seeing she's getting ready to, go home for the 3 days she'd stayed. And she sees this thing crawl out of the hog pasture. It opens that old car door and crawls inside of that car, and she can see it watching my mom. So if my mom wouldn't have known and she wouldn't have flashed the porch light, my mom would have walked right past that car.
Ugh. That's scary to think about. Oof. Especially with what we've talked off air with the intimacy component of these things. That I believe there's how do I put this? Again, a R-rated component to these things when it comes to a lot of, especially in the female arena. I definitely think they pay attention to the ladies a little bit.
Well, they always thought that my mom was at more risk than any of the other girls. And that's bothered me throughout the years. The only thing, and it may not even be anything to it, that I could come up with is my mom, I think around probably 12 years old. She had the closest encounter to it. She was walking down the steps at the house, or playing on the steps or something. She's at the steps, and she saw it look up over the side of they had the big concrete steps and the big concrete porch, and it looked up at her like this. She could see like this much of it, and she said it looked like a werewolf. It didn't look like, she said, it didn't look like a Bigfoot, didn't look like a monkey. She said it looked like a werewolf, which went to the same thing, as what the other guy I told you had seen there also at the side of the house. Well, Granny would always tell us as kids, it was funny. Her dad was full blood Cherokee. That's where I get my native. And she would always tell us the Bigfoot isn't going to bother you. She'd always say he's curious. He might watch you. He might throw something at you. But then she would always tell us, but those other things out there, they'll hurt you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, like maybe. She was like, they will hurt you.
And Dad always thought that the Bigfoot and the Dogman, they didn't really try to cross paths very much. You got Dogman territory, Bigfoot territory, and they don't like each other. Is from what he had always told me. I don't know why or anything like that, but yeah, I'd heard that before. So so you said something that I always find super interesting. And I'm trying to make this connection too. So you're Cherokee, there's definitely an Indian, a Native American component to all this too. So where Dad is buried in Loudoun County, Tennessee, very close to the Sequoia National Museum. Now, Mike, do you know about the Sequoia National Museum? Have you ever heard of it before?
I haven't heard of it.
So the Sequoia National Museum is or very close to what's known as Tanasi. And Tanasi was the Cherokee capital back then. Have you ever heard that before?
Yes,
Before
I've
the
heard of
Trail
it.
of Tears. Yeah, and that's where we get Tennessee from. Is we literally named our state after the Cherokee, basically capital. So, but Tanasi is like literally like 5 miles from where I buried Dad, and same with the Cherokee National Museum. So my question is what does this area and what does your area that has a lot of Native American influence and background and history and culture, why are they drawn to that, it seems? And why are there so many experiences there with the paranormal? Does it have to do with medicine men? Does it have to do just with they live a long time and they knew the Native Americans? Like, what do you guys think about that? Am I on something, or am I just way off on left field here?
I think you might be onto something right there.
I mean, the reason why, like, I always think about it, it's like there are bad things that have happened there. I know there was a guy I know that I'm really good friends with. His first wife killed herself there. So that's one thing. There's a very brutal murder that happened there, and they shut it off to cars after that, after something terrible happened there. Who knows what's gone on there before with Cherokee, good and bad. But we know that this place is extremely historical. Even if it was the capital, it didn't just become the capital overnight. We know it had to have been extremely meaningful for who knows how long. We think, we Europeans, we only think the Cherokee had 100 years or something like that before. Who knows how long the Cherokees had before, we were here. And who knows how long Bigfoot lived.
And
so,
what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because where I'm at, we have a lot of Cherokee background, a lot of Cherokee history. We have a place down here that's called the Payment Grounds, and the Civil War soldiers would trade with the Cherokee, and you can go down there still today, and you can find artifacts. You can find arrowheads, spearheads. We've found a bunch of that. There's a lot of Cherokee graves down there, unmarked cemeteries that are still to this day that are unmarked, and they're underwater a lot during the normal season. And a lot of the people in my area that have had encounters besides my granny and us, they are Cherokee. This is a heavily Cherokee area. Just a little ways from here is a town called Grove, Locust Grove. And that's where the Girl Scout murders happened. And that's where you have the shaman are still in practice. The old ways are still in practice. And you don't go up in those hills if you're a white man, because you're not safe. They don't want you there. They're still that way.
Right.
And it's not that they hate you because you're white, but they have this. Yeah, they feel like that they were pushed out of their land.
No, they were.
And the people's trying to hurt them. And when they had the big Girl Scout murder thing, they were at the actual courthouse, smudging the courthouse and stuff, and they never did believe that the man they said killed those girls was guilty. They felt like he was picked out because he was Cherokee, and that caused a huge rivalry. But up around that area, they have what they call the Gugwe. I spoke to the shaman. They laughed at me when I told them Dog Man. They were like, "That's a white man's name. That's not what they are." And it's weird when you talk to them though, because they don't act like they're telling you a legend. It's like they're telling you, this is how it is. I know this is how it is. They're like, we spoke to them. We traded with them. They knew our language. They ate our children. They stole our women. We know what they are.
Right. It'd be like me telling you about my dog. My dog is a red golden retriever. That's not a legend.
Right.
I don't. Let me tell you the legend of the red golden retriever. It's like you said. It's facts. That makes a lot of sense, Mike.
And then the little people. My grandpa told me about the little people, and he would tell us about on the Trail of Tears. If it wasn't for the little people, a lot of the Indians would have died. The little people weren't necessarily bad. They helped them along the trail, but you had to be careful not to trust the little things. Like they would help you, but you didn't want to trust them too much. They were nefarious. That they had that side to them that they would trick you, or But he talked about how they would follow, and they would run up and give some of the women berries or water or medicine, or but then he would turn around in the same story and tell you, but if you see the little people, you don't trust them. They're not your friend. They're kind of conniving, I guess.
Right. All these legends that we think are just fairy tales, just stories, just made up things. It's funny to me. We in the the 1900s, we just try to fairy tale this all away, and it's like, no, these fairy tales are steeped in great lore and legend that's happened over and over and over again. It's not necessarily just made up stuff. It's like, if I just made up a story about this or that, you'd be like, okay, Travis made up that story. But it's like, no, these are reoccurring themes over hundreds of thousands of years in multiple cultures. And it's just wild to me to see that. Let's see. There's definitely a Native American component. I have Cherokee and Cree blood, and I believe the Bigfoot can sense this. They were always very active with my great grandmother, full Cherokee. Makes sense. There might be something to that Native American bloodline. That I just think I think that that might be a bigger thing that we may have missed.
They would
Could that
stand outside at my granny's house, and they would call my granny's name standing out on the sidewalk and make the motion with their hand for her to come here and say her name over and over and over.
Yeah.
And those are terrifying nights. I've heard them, say my mom's name, through the water cooler. I've heard them beat on the house. I've heard the whistles. I've heard the growls. I've heard, all that. If people haven't experienced that, it is very, very scary. And, I remember it was funny, but I had a 30-30 I got for my 16th birthday. And whenever you would go outside, you just felt like it didn't matter what you had. Like, it always had the upper hand. And you had that feeling. And
when I was walking down that rock, I had a 12-gauge shotgun, and I still felt so vulnerable, so small. I felt so puny. Well, even with that.
Yes, that's how I felt. And going to the bathroom, I mean, we would almost bust because we would try not to go because the bathroom was at the back of the house, and the back of the house was by the back door, and that's where the yard light didn't shine, and that's where the scraps, it's where Granny would dump the scraps out. And man, you'd go back there and that floor would squeak, and you would just like, when that squirts, it just sounded like somebody was ringing a dinner bell. It really wasn't that loud, but to us it was like, oh my God, it knows I'm back here. And I remember one night I was going to the bathroom, and I told my cousin, I was like, hey man, will you sit at the kitchen table and wait for me? Because I was scared. And I was going to the bathroom, and I just walked back past that bathroom door, the outside door, and the doorknob just started rattling, and something started pushing on the door. And I remember we just ran, and I'm not afraid to tell people, I was scared to death. It was something that I did not enjoy. It was not fun.
I can imagine. That's wild. And for those people that don't think that that there's this definitely a paranormal, I like to be biblical about it, spiritual aspect of it. But for those folks that don't believe that there's a paranormal aspect to the world, even in that, I was reading, this is dumb of me, not dumb of me, but this is wild. I was reading Leviticus, which is, a great way to fall asleep, by the way, is reading Leviticus. But it was talking about, like, do not mess with mediums. Do not mess with those who consult dead spirits. And then it's
Right.
and then I'm thinking to myself, hold on here. Wait a second. It's not saying that dead spirits don't exist. It's not saying that these mediums don't exist. It's just bullcrap. It's saying don't mess with them. Hey, there's
Exactly.
dead spirits out there that talk. Don't be screwing around with them. Don't be talking to them. That, like, when I read that, it kind of hit me. It's like, man, this is. I don't know. Sometimes it's like you get to this point. It's like, am I just kind of fooling myself a little bit? But this spiritual paranormal, this realm that we can't see, it exists. It has always existed, and I mean, I've got a book that's 4,000 years old that talks about, hey, don't be messing with this stuff.
What you're saying right now, I've had multiple conversations with people regarding my faith and necromancy, and speaking with fortune tellers and tarot card readers and stuff. And I've studied it pretty extensively because a lot of people, I don't, and I try to explain to them, I'm not arguing with you that it's not happening. I believe that what they're saying is happening. But what I'm trying to tell you is you don't know where they're getting that information from. And that's why God is telling you, do not depend on them for your answers. Come to the Father, because he is not the one that is going to deceive you. He is not going to confuse you. But if you go to the other ones, they're going to deceive you, and they're going to trick you, and they're going to make you believe that you're talking to people that you're not talking to. And whenever you go down that route, you're not worshiping and giving faith to your Father for answers. You're looking for answers beyond what God is willing to give you at that time.
And I think a lot of the times, like a lot of people will have an encounter. They'll have something happen that is completely outside of their societal, science-based, realm-based like thing, and then they'll be like, and then their paradigm completely shifts of, oh gosh, like there is something other than this flesh, than what I can see and what I can prove. There's something else, and then they will go to tarot cards or mediums and all that, and they will have that confirmed in a physical form, and people will trust that over hey, the actual truth that we may not be able to just call down physically all the time, but manifest itself differently.
Yeah, because I mean, what is and this is what I think of, what would be a more, a better way for a demon to deceive somebody than to come back as a loved one that you've lost. When I lost my dad, I would have reached out to my dad any way that I could, because, I missed him. There was things left unsaid. There was things I would like to tell him, things, I wasn't done. I felt like we wasn't done. And it happened so fast. And a part of you wants to reach out, but then I would reach back to my faith and I would know, okay, I know what's happening here. These beings know that I'm sad. They're going to try to trick me and to give them place, because the more place you give them, the more power they have. So what I would do personally is, I know you're not supposed to speak to the dead. So what I would do is I would go into prayer and I would pray to God, and I would tell God, not my dad, not speak to the dead, but I would tell God, I miss my dad. I love my dad. Let him know I'm okay, because I can talk to God and not commit necromancy. So I would go to God and then tell him, this is how I feel. And whenever I started doing that, I started getting peace. I started feeling like, hey, it's okay. Everything's okay. God had took care of those things. And I started it was a peace. And it's hard to explain, but the more that I stayed on that path, and there's people out there, they believe that, hey, my dad came back and he talked to me, and I know they get frustrated at me, but I'm like, no, that wasn't your dad.
Right. No, I totally get that. That actually happened to my mom. She told me that they one, she's like, she just called it out, and she's like, demon showed up at the foot of the bed, tried to act like dad. I was like, you ain't, and the way she put it was like, it looked like him, but it wasn't him. It didn't look right. It didn't look right. And she called it out, and then it basically, she said it like morphed in front of her or something like that. And that
Your
was,
mom. Your mom
that
has
was,
discernment.
I remember hearing this, I think in my teens, and I'm like, it just freaked me out. And it was wild. But like, I don't know, like both my parents have had very paranormal pasts. So it's just interesting. It's wild.
I think discernment is a big, big thing that people need to pray for. And because without that, I think it's easy for us to be fooled, because, we have to remember these creatures aren't, to me, they're not dumb animals.
No, they're not
These
dumb.
creatures are very intelligent, and
I
they
think that's
probably were
exactly
there.
right.
They were there in the beginning. They lived through the truth. They know the truth, you know. And what better person to deceive you than somebody that was there that watched it happen, you know?
Absolutely. I'm right on board there. What other questions do we have for the DNA study? I felt we always get on these rabbit trails, and I love the conversation. But
To me, that the DNA, I coming from the background I come from, security and working with law enforcement and seeing how, you know, investigations are conducted and how evidence is pursued, chain of command. I don't see how there is an argument, because DNA is it's so controlled. It is so pinpoint. I mean, if it's there, it's there. You know. I mean, to me,
right.
that's when I said your dad finally, your dad took it beyond a an argumentative topic, and he put concrete proof to it. He said, you know, y'all can argue footprints, y'all can argue photos, y'all can argue video,
Eh,
but you can't argue facts.
yeah, and that's why Dad really kind of got disillusioned with a lot of it back in back in 2000, 16, 17. He just said he kind of got heck with it. Like, I don't send me videos, don't send me pictures. He didn't care about that because it's like I've got DNA evidence. Why am I worried about a footprint? And then he kind of got back into that. Okay, yes, you have that DNA evidence, but here's things that people can look and see, and for them it's opening them up to it and all that. So he kind of came back around, but there for a little bit, Dad got real jaded with it, if that makes sense.
I understand his frustration because your dad was probably a lot like what I am. And whenever you do something for so long, you work with professionals in that, in that area of DNA, you know the truth, and then you have these people still trying to discredit you, and you're like, it's right here. I mean, it's black and white, and your dad didn't just find these results easily, did he? Your dad went through some scrutiny. I mean, your dad,
Oh yeah.
it was a fight. It was a fight.
Oh yeah, Dad was called a liar. Melba Ketchum was called many terrible things. You know, it the study was tried to be discredited and all this. And again, we're the great thing is we're going to get into the nitty-gritty details in the reading of this. And to be honest with you, I don't care if I sell one book. I do not care. What I do care about is if you watch the YouTube channel and the information gets out and y'all talk about it. I love that. I don't know, that for some it makes me happy. But
I do have a question in regards to the book, because I know somebody had asked in your last show where to get the book, and I know that you had said Amazon, but is there another way to directly purchase it not through Amazon?
Not that I'm aware of right now, and I apologize about that. So here's the deal. Like, I haven't been able to. What sucks when people die is sometimes you have the passwords and the accounts to things, and sometimes you just don't, and there's no way to get it. And I'm not going to screw up people's access to getting the book. I don't know how to. I know it's being like it's still published through Amazon and whatnot, but no way can I figure out how to get into Dad's account, passwords, anything like that. So when it's bought, unfortunately, Amazon's getting 100% of it. But hey, the information's still out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But but that's where I'm at with it. Is it's just that may seem irresponsible, but I don't want to screw up people's access to getting the material out there, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right.
So, but that's.
So did your dad have a theory on the red-headed one?
On the redheaded one, not that I'm aware of. I think that he, just like anything else, these things have genetic diversity. You know, they have thoughts, feelings, all that. He dabbled back and forth with the notion that maybe you could save these things, that maybe you could lead them to Christ. And he never fully got to flesh that theory out. But that was something that I do know kept him up at night. And I think that really messes with us a little bit too. It's like, okay, you have a soul, you still have a soul in these beings. It may not be God created, but is it salvageable? Like, is it savable? And that's a question. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. And I think it's
Yeah, I
wise
mean,
to think, because we know that. I mean, we know that David's mind. It tells us to go and to preach to all creatures. It doesn't say humans. I think it says creatures. I mean, that's. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you, but that's something that Dad didn't know either.
well, and I've heard accounts where people have had, whether it's mind speak or what, with these things, they are aware, they know God, they know who Christ is. So at what
Right.
extent is it that, how far do you go?
Right.
Or
That's
take
true. That's
you
so
know,
true.
L.A. Marzulli. Back to L.A. Marzulli. I was watching him on this subject, and he was talking about the Nephilim, and they actually went to a person and asked him to go to Jesus and ask Jesus, is there forgiveness for us? And L.A. Marzulli said that Jesus told him, there is not forgiveness for you, nor is there for any of your descendants, that they were a complete abomination. And I'll try to find that one. He goes really deep into scripture. He talks about what Jesus actually said about it, the Nephilim, and it was really interesting. Of course, that man, he loses me. He can go deep.
Right.
But he was talking about that.
You're like me. My ADHD can only keep me non-distracted for so long.
Oh man, that guy, he goes so deep on it, and then he's like, he has a way of talking too. He has that way to, to make you listen. And but he made a point in that also. He said, look at the evil that surrounds these things.
That's true.
How many people do you know that investigates these things, that has peace in their life?
That's, man,
Nobody.
I'll tell you what, like I said before this episode, man, it's been rough. It's been rough for all of us. It's been rough for all of us. So, Randy, I haven't got a chance to talk to you, but I don't know, but I know Jess and Mike and myself have had hard times this last couple of weeks.
Uh-huh.
I can concur.
So, and
Speaking of encounters, I haven't ever encountered a Bigfoot, but what I have encountered was a large wolf-like creature that was standing on its hind legs, big enough to pick me up with one hand and swallow me whole. It had 15 to 17-inch claws on the top four fingers. It was within arm's reach of me at night. And before this encounter, I didn't believe in werewolves and monsters, but I couldn't deny what was staring right in front of my face. So if whatever this creature was exists, so does everything else that they've labeled as legendary or mythology or whatever you want to call But how do you get somebody to believe a lie? You got to take the truth and turn the truth into the lie and turn it into the truth. And if you
Makes
look
sense.
at the world that we live in, to hide the Bible, you got to hide all the giants and hide everything that proves the Bible is true to get us to believe a lie that we descended from monkeys, in my opinion.
Yep. And that's why, and Randy, that is why, in my opinion, that this study was so ignored and so discredited because of what you just said. Because it doesn't fit their paradigm. It doesn't
Correct.
fit
Right.
their narrative. It doesn't fit, it just doesn't fit. So what do they do with evidence that doesn't fit? Ignore it.
They
It doesn't exist.
They covered it from the truth
Give,
to a
give
lie,
us
or
their
it's
own.
just the story. It's not real. They got it. They have to. Otherwise, this data proves the Bible is true. The data that DNA exists, that's not of human and not of normal animals, then what is it? If it
Yeah.
doesn't come from the fallen angels, where does it come from?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is with this nuclear DNA that we'll again get more in depth into this book, this nuclear DNA, the way it's stranded, it shouldn't be alive. Like there's markers that's like this is impossible type of things. Like
Huh.
this creature can't exist, but yet here it is. That is what I think that these scientists, these folks that are so physically bound, they can't wrap their heads around. Just like with you, Randy, it's like you had that experience with that dog, whatever it was. It's like now you can't deny it because you had the experience, and
I
the person with the experience is never at the mercy of someone with the opinion, by the way.
Yeah. And I was skeptical. I thought people who were believing this stuff were crazy because that's what we were taught. That's what I was taught as a kid. I used to see things when I was younger, and I was told that's my overactive imagination. Come to find out, I do have Native American blood. I don't have any information on what tribe or whatever, but perhaps that could be why I'm having encounters with these creatures. Now, here's the thing. After this encounter, I started watching Mike's show. Then I started having these memories of hundreds of encounters over a 20-year period of time. I've encountered these creatures, but the memories were taken from me. And they're only now coming back after I've been doing this for a little while. And it's crazy. I've encountered these creatures. I've caught them napping with my horse. These wolf-like creatures were as big as a horse.
Man, that's
and
wild.
I'd catch them. I'd walk up on them. I'd go looking for my horse. I couldn't find him. I'd go looking in the field. I'd walk up on him. And he would be sleeping with these large wolf-like creatures as big as him, if not larger. Now, I didn't have any electronics on me. And this would be in the daytime. I had no cell phone, no flashlight, nothing. And I could have reached out and touched both of these large wolf-like creatures that was as big as a horse. And they got up and looked at me, and their eyes these things had heads. Their heads were massive.
Man.
We're talking the heads on these wolves were massive, okay? And I'm standing between two of them, the back ends of them, and I could have reached out and touched both of their back ends. They made no sense. When they woke up, they lifted their heads, they turned and looked at me. Their eyes was larger than my fist, over 18 to 20 inches apart. And when they looked at me and saw me standing there, their eyes about bugged out of their eye sockets. Because they couldn't believe I was standing there.
That's in that close. I have a question for you. So Dad talked about when he saw that dog man, and it really scared him. It scared him so bad that it just absolutely, it really did. So the one thing about my dad that a lot of people may not know is dad's personal life wasn't the greatest. So on his second wife, is the one who had picked him up from that encounter. And I asked her about it. I said, "Hey, you remember when Dad said he saw that dog man?" And she said he was as scared as he's ever been. He was white as a ghost, and he was freaked out. Now, you know, Dad, and for me, that's confirmation from another person that this is, Dad just wasn't making any of this up. But he remembers saying, Randy, that these things, like he said, the eyes on it look like the eyes on like a dead deer, like a taxidermist deer. Like there was nothing behind it. It was soulless, and it really bothered him that he felt like he was just looking into nothingness. Was your encounter the same, or did you feel like that, or was that not the way you felt?
I was never in fear for my life. I was fascinated with whatever I was looking at. I couldn't say or do anything because I couldn't take my eyes off of what I was standing before me, because my eyes were sending signals to my brain, and my brain were rejecting the signals.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
brain's
because
like, no, these things don't exist. My eyes are
the
like,
cognitive
it's
dissonance is like, this is not happening. Yeah,
yeah. It's like, and then when you get past that and you realize these things are real, I was fascinated with these creatures. They never once showed their teeth. They've never growled at me. I've been within arm's reach of these creatures many of times, and they've never even showed their teeth at me or growled. They've never showed any violence or aggression towards me. Now, when I was out there, they have warned me. They don't like me going out there with video cameras. They've made that very clear. They don't like that. They basically told me if they don't want me messing around by my house, don't be in their house messing around. It's basically the message I got from them.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's wild. That's so interesting.
It reminds me when your dad brought out the DNA, it's kind of like your dad had the proof, but everybody was yelling, "Give us Barabbas,"
Yeah. Give us. I think here's the thing: people want a body. People want a dead body. That's what they want. And until they have a dead body, they're not going to believe. That's just the way it is, in my opinion.
And unfortunately, even if they were to have the body, that wouldn't be good enough either. It would be something else.
Yeah, you're right. It would be.
You have fake. This is coming from you, in my opinion.
Say it again, Randy.
If you have proof, the powers that be will come and take the proof from you.
Bingo. You would never be seen again.
Correct. You would disappear.
Yep. You'd like what is it? It's funny when our politicians even get up on there and talk about whistleblowers of different sorts. And they say, "Oh yeah, you'll commit suicide by shooting yourself in the back of the head 5 times." They all admit it now. It's out in the open.
Yeah.
It is out in the open, my friends. So,
and I'm starting to see things even today that I didn't see growing up that just keep showing how correct the Bible is.
Oh man, that's the wild thing. Yep.
Yeah, it just keeps on and on and on proving itself. And I think the Bible right now is under attack more today than it ever has been.
Of course.
And people don't like the idea of the answers, I think, that the Bible gives us. They want their own answer. They want it to be their monster, their way, their belief, because it's easier sometimes if you could only have it your way.
Yeah.
But God didn't say, the Bible's up for debate. He said, this is it. This is the law. And you either live by the law or you die by the law. And
yep. And people are like everything. They like their Bigfoot in their little box. Well, Bigfoot is this, or Dogman is this. Oh, no, you're crazy if you believe that. We all like things in our own little nice, neat boxes, and the creator of this universe likes to take those and shake them up a little bit.
I tell everybody this. Whenever I went and whenever I was nominated to be an investigator. That's I tell everybody an investigator is not a rank, it's a recommendation. And I was recommended to be an investigator, and I had to go to school and I had to pass certain qualifications to even be able to hold that once I was even nominated for it. And the guy that was teaching the class, he was from California, and he had been involved in a lot of serial killers and stuff that he had investigated. And he said, one of the things that'll make you a good investigator is to follow the truth. Don't have your mind made up, no matter what the media has said, no matter what you have heard. Lay your hands upon the tangible evidence. Follow the truth. It may not always lead you where you want to go, the evidence, but it ultimately will take you to the truth. And the truth may not be the truth that everybody wants. The truth very rarely is. But if you're a true investigator and you truly want to know why, how, when, then you have to follow the evidence. And sometimes it'll disappoint you. 9 times out of 10, he said, you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you want the truth, then you have to follow the evidence. And you have to be willing to accept that you're going to be wrong 9 times out of 10,
Exactly. And
Travis,
that's
I have a question for Travis.
yes, sir.
With this data, if there were any way to enter this data into like a supercomputer to give us some image of what the father might look like, I wonder if there's any way to do something like that.
Well, the father, I don't think there's any way to have any
AI
clue what the.
With AI.
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not sure, man. Dude, that's such a good question.
Data. Give it to a supercomputer with AI assistance and see if they could come up with some images of what the fathers might look like. I wonder if that might be a possibility.
Buddy, I'm sure it can be. Like if anybody has access to something like that, they can look up. Well, they can look up the study is called, for the record, the study is called Novel North American Hominins Next Generation Sequencing of 3 Whole Genomes and Associated Studies. So if you go look up that study and you're a DNA person, you can find that nuclear DNA, that 3 whole genomes worth of it, and put it into an AI supercomputer and make us a picture. That would be amazing if you're smart enough to do that.
Hopefully
that would be
somebody
super cool.
That would be cool, wouldn't it?
That would be, because I know there is like Dad has like in the book, and it's hard to like read this part because Dad literally put a massive section in here that is the what is it called? Basically the hold on here, the exhibit section, and it's basically where he has everything that he like talks about. He puts the long form content in the back where it's like where again he's just not pulling this out of his rear end. He actually shows the supplemental data for like the DNA, like for one sample. He shows another sample there. He shows final sample submissions, all this stuff. So if you know anything about DNA, it might be in the back of this book. I'm just being real with you. I don't know how to read. I don't know how to read these DNA results, but it's pretty wild.
Maybe Stephen can come across some kind of DNA expert who can help us out when sometime in the near future. That'd be cool.
That would be super cool. But yeah, hold on here. There's literally a table of mutations back here that Dad has got from the study. It's got a whole bunch of 1s and 0s and stuff like that. But looks like it's the FTDNA. Like,
oh, wow.
Like, I mean, we're talking like tons of stuff, tons of 1s and 0s and 2. Like it. I mean, it's here for those who know what they're looking at there.
Is that the genetic? But is those ones and zeros like the genetic chances of a mutation? Is that what that's talking about?
No, this is the following table I've made from mutations found from April for Bigfoot's 0102 Florida samples. Give me 30 seconds. Let me finish this up. Because formatting, I make no guarantee that I've correctly collected this data. 8 columns, 8 Bigfoots. Okay. There is T2 project that says 10% of your penetration is haploid group. So I think I'm not 1,000% sure. I think that those zeros are just the mutations of it. I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about the small stuff, Travis.
But man, it's for those that are looking at it, Dad absolutely did like there's just so much work that went into this and looking at it and holding it. It's man, it's a legacy, man. And that's, I don't know. I never truly, it's that, you don't know what you got till it's gone. So cliche, but it's so true, man. It's just so true.
I know your pain. I lost my dad in August of 2003, and I miss him every day. But I know where he's at. I know I'll see him again when I get to heaven. And that keeps me going.
I appreciate that. I'm definitely better than I was. I miss him a heck of a lot, and I keep him alive by doing this. If that makes any sense.
Yes, sir, it does.
Oh yeah.
Because that is your dad. That data and that research, that's your father's work. That's his legacy, and you're continuing that.
Thank you. I don't want to research, but I definitely want to keep the conversation alive. Like we gotta. There are too many people that work too hard for this to just be swept under the rug.
But with you doing this, you are continuing his research, whether you know it or not. Getting this data out to other people, it's amazing. This is a lot of data and research your father's life's work, and it's not going to waste. Thank you, sir, for sharing this information with us.
I appreciate that.
Fascinating. I've been hooked to your information all night, so thank you for sharing that with us, Travis.
Thank you guys for giving me the platform to do it.
Oh yeah, anytime. And you're going to be talking more about the nuclear, right? Coming up, is that what?
Yep.
Is that what's coming up?
Yeah. So the next couple chapters we got coming up is we're going to finish up the Sierra Kills. The Sierra Kills is just a very, very long chapter. I got about 40 minutes into reading it, and my ADHD just couldn't take anymore. I couldn't read. I'm being real with you. I'm terrible at it. So we had to break that up. I've got to break that into 2. And then the next one you've got the NDAs and naysayers. So you have a lot of non-disclosure agreements stuff coming up and talking about that. And then you've got to talk about the like-minded conspiracy, which means is people that are of like mind don't necessarily have to agree and come up with a conspiracy of, we've got to mess this up. Like it's one of those where it's agreed, like everybody's intentions or it benefits everyone to go in this way. So dad talks about that. Then after that, after the like-minded conspiracy, let's see here. You've got, then you've got the passing peer review, Jammez journal ordeal. That was a major thing. And then the chapter 10, the Sasquatch Genome Project results. There's definitely some pictures of the what human hair, what Sasquatch hair looks like, the testing results, just phenomenal stuff here. Then you can do then you get back into chapter 11, the Samaj Bigfoot stake, that killed, where they got a ton of Bigfoot stuff, which I believe came from basically they carved a massive chunk of meat off of that Bigfoot, that baby Bigfoot. So you talk about that. He's going to talk about Dr. Sykes, a wolf in sheep's clothing. You've got chapter 13, which are criticisms, that come in, and that people start talking about criticism rebuttals. And then after that, you've got supporting scientists and published studies that have been happening. This is no joke. This is not just Dad said this. This is multiple angles, multiple things, documentation of what happened, and really getting into the weeds here. But it's going to take some time to do it. I want to do it the right way, where people can digest it in 20 to 30-minute segments. It is just about all I can do, to be honest with you too. But it's going to be fun. Could it be possible for DNA to be shared through human female line with one of these creatures, and that causes the creature's attraction to certain people? Definitely could be. I think I don't know though, and here's my concern with that is when we look, and again, this is going to be completely biblical. When we look biblically, there wasn't a ton of Nephilim females. It was just a lot of Nephilim males, and I think there might be something up with the female version of a Nephilim or a Bigfoot, where it just doesn't last very long, because they always seem to take females. They always to breed, in my opinion. But that's, again, just Travis's opinion, not anything more than that. Why wouldn't you just take the body of the infant instead of piece it off the body? So the reason why you wouldn't take the whole body is because the whole body is literally the size of, we think of an infant as an infant. We're talking, Justin said the infant's like 5 to 6 feet tall. So and it looks like a human being. It looks like a human. It looks like he said, a black kid mixed with a chimpanzee. So you go up to the game warden and you've got this human looking creature.
Yeah.
That it may be human. If you DNA tested it, guess what? It came out to be human. If they only tested the mitochondrial DNA. Hey, I murdered somebody. That's why Justin didn't do that. And it seems to me, this is Travis's opinion again. Justin cut a big piece of, he either took the whole body or cut it into pieces, and they sent a big piece of the leg to Melba Ketchum, and it scared Melba Ketchum so bad, because it looked like it came off a human cadaver, that she did not want to keep that with her, because just in case the authorities showed up.
Yeah.
So, and we'll get deeper into that in that chapter. But yeah, it's pretty wild.
I have a question. Because I know in one of the other chapters you were reading, you explained that they were taking DNA samples if anybody did get them. Is that still active if people were to have that?
I think Melba is still doing that. I don't 100% know, and I'm sorry that I don't, but I do know that there are multiple Bigfoot studies again that they're trying to do. So I do think that you can send DNA evidence or any DNA to other ones. I do know that the North American Bigfoot Research Project, or NABS, is not taking that. So that's David Pilates' group is not doing that again.
Okay.
I think they did this and they felt like they got burned, and a lot of money was spent and it wasn't respected. And they basically said, screw y'all.
Right. That's understandable.
because again, we're talking 2010, 11 era. It was extremely expensive. People think that this is just some crackpots, like me, just hanging out in my kitchen doing this. No, hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent on this, and it just to be absolutely ignored by the scientific community. I don't think you're going to have many investors do the same thing again.
Right.
If that makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So
There's too many people not ready to accept it.
right. Just way too many people, like you said, just not ready to accept the truth. Just now, I mean, we've had the UAP, the UAP or UFO stuff. That information's been out there for a long time. I think just now people are ready to accept it, for what it is, and they're still not ready to accept it for what it is.
Right.
They people still believe it's interplanetary, not interdimensional, and that's the wild part.
Yeah.
In the 90s, the 1990s, in the early 2000s, if you believed in UFOs, they labeled you as crazy. You were crazy. If you
Oh
believed
yeah,
in that.
you were crazy. So one thing, I know we're going on 2:15, but one thing that Dad always talked about is, he was in the Air Force, and in the Air Force, he had a top secret level clearance because he was in communications. He made sure that that basically one signal was going to another, and you have to have people listen to those. You have to have those communication guys that are on the line, making sure there's no interference, making sure no one else is listening, and making sure everything goes okay. So Dad was privy to a lot of very top secret conversations. So Dad always talked about he never wanted to go out to Nevada because he's like, that's where they're keeping these daggum aliens, and he's like, that's where they're keeping these bodies. They've got them over there. He's like, there's UFOs all over the daggum place. He talked about that, and he talked about always how the military, or the things that we see today, at least in the military, that's 20 to 30-year-old technology. AI, by the way, that we all get to play with on our phones and we think is so cool. That's 30 to 40-year-old technology.
Yeah.
That is absolutely old tech. The military has these massive supercomputers that have been able to do that for years and years and years. And the good guys have them and the bad guys have them. And Travis is getting on a rabbit trail. I'm sorry.
No,
It's okay.
I think
Quantum
it's all. I think it all links together.
Yeah.
Where I do a lot of my investigating, there's lights in the sky too.
Oh, absolutely. Dad, I need to download some pictures off of Dad's phone of the UFOs that he had taken pictures of that were screwing around with him, like and he'd always see them, and it's like, yep, there they are. They're just messing with me out there, and just like you said, lights in the sky and orbs and all that stuff.
I think it's because they're all related. I think you have a embodied creature and a disembodied creature. And what if the disembodied ones are the ones before the flood? What if they're still running loose out here because judgment hasn't came yet? They have nowhere to go yet.
Right. Yeah, I that's definitely something to think about. That's a great question.
Note, could that be where those EVPs are coming from? The dead spirits who haven't been cast into hell yet. Could that be what's causing those EVPs that you're picking up when you're recording?
Here's the thing. It could be, Randy. It could be.
I mean,
well, and we know they exist because Jesus tells you they exist. With the man in the daggum the cemetery. He had a bunch of them. Bunch of spirits in him. So many that they called themselves Legion. And here's the thing. He taught. So Jesus confirms that these exist because they're in him. He speaks to them, and they say, "Have you come to torment us before our time?" So they know they have a time. The second thing is they ask to go into the pigs, and the weird thing is Jesus says, "Okay, go," and he allows it too, which is really weird. So it's such a weird scene here, but I think it
Then it's
placates to
weird.
these things are real.
Yeah.
You know, there was a guy talking the other night. You talk about the pigs, ran down into the sea and they drowned themselves. I was listening to a guy talk about that the other night, and he was like, I always wondered, why did Jesus say, yeah, you can go into the pigs? And he said when they went into the pigs ran into the sea and they drowned. But God walked on the sea.
That's a good
What
point.
was that a metaphor of him saying the demons drowned under the waters that I walk on?
Absolutely, man. You could definitely preach that. I think there's nothing in the Bible. There's nothing in Scripture that's there for no reason. So absolutely. I mean, there these details like we think like why in the world is that there? I think that's absolutely a great study.
I mean, there was a guy the other night said something on a show. I think it was L.A. Marzulli was talking about it, and I'm never going to look at that pink salt the same again. The Himalayan salt. Have you seen that?
Do I need to get rid of it? Well, I don't know about the pink salt.
I was
I'm
watching
scared
a thing
now. Do I need to
the other
get it
night
all
on
out of my house?
Well, they were showing a thing on the Himalayan salt the other night, and they said, "Let us show you what we think it really is." And they show the inside of a dead animal compared to the Himalayan salt, and they said we're eating giants. that the Himalayan salt, the mines and everything that they're mining all this from, is coming from the giants. It's really interesting to look up because they do like a side by side comparison of like what a fossilized animal looks like, and then what how they get the Himalayan salt, and it looks identical.
I'm halfway sold on a lot of that actually. So what is that that formation in it looks like a daggum. It's this massive thing, and it stops and it's flat on top.
I was gonna say, I think I knew exactly where you were going. The one that looks like a giant tree.
Yes, it's a giant petrified tree stump.
Yeah,
the Devil's Tower. Or something like that.
Yes. And when they said, "Oh, that's just a giant petrified tree stump," and I look at it, I'm like, "Oh my God, that's a giant petrified tree stump." So and they show these thing like these stone things, and they look and their face and it's like, oh my gosh, like we look at the world as so differently than what it is. I mean, heck, look at the moon. Like this, the universe, this realm is a bad neighborhood. A lot of crazy stuff has happened that we don't know about.
We probably don't want to know.
Yeah.
Well said, Travis. Well spoken. I like that analogy.
Thanks, man. I didn't come up with that. That's a Chuck Missler thing that he talked about. I'm gonna love me some Chuck Missler.
Perfect timing to use that quote.
That's funny.
Well, Travis, I've had you on here over 2 hours.
I love it. I really, really enjoy it. It's such a pleasure.
I'd like to have you back though. The further you get into the nuclear, I think that's going to be really interesting.
I think so too. I'll do a few more weeks, and then you know where to find me. You text me or DM me, and we'll get back on. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Magic Nova, I appreciate you.
Yeah, we definitely want to talk about that, because that really caught my attention whenever you said that this isn't even supposed to exist, but it does.
Right. That's the one thing that I think that really freaks a lot of scientists out, to the fact of where these university labs and whatnot, we're like, nope, we're done here. We're not giving you this back.
Yeah.
Have a great day. Or what the blank did you send me? Or, stuff like that. It's that stuff rather than, oh, okay, this is a possum. Or something like
threw
that.
it
You know
out.
what I mean?
We threw it in the trash. We accidentally left it out and let it get contaminated.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, I think we need to, so we lost it. We did this. And again, these are university labs, by the way, that have people on death row. So if they do this with one, if they can't be trusted to do this, then nothing they've ever done can be trusted. So
Right.
that's the cognitive dissonance that people have to figure out, by the way. It's like, oh, these labs are so terrible that they contaminate everything with human DNA, or it's okay and they do such a good enough job that they are allowed to find someone guilty and put someone to death because of their results that they find. Because those two can't coexist.
Right. Yeah, it has to fall within their box.
Absolutely.
They're not willing to look outside of the box.
So, man, I'll go for another 4 hours. We gotta end it. Unfortunately, guys, seriously, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. If you guys came over for me, please subscribe to Abnormal Investigations, and of course, Jess's stuff was the Arcane and Paranormal. Please subscribe to that. Now, Randy, I don't know where you're at, and I apologize.
Randy is just Randy's our support.
Randy's the support. I
Oh,
like
yeah,
it.
get your links up in there so
Yeah.
the chat. I wasn't
Dude.
ignoring this.
He's our technical support.
There it is, right there.
Hey, I love it. I love it. I genuinely appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody. I'm just, all I am is a dude reading a book, but I sure appreciate everybody. I'm trying to make it make it digestible.
Oh, we enjoy it thoroughly, and then maybe one of these days I can have you on my outdoor channel and we can kind of switch the subject around. And,
I would love that. Dude, that's my jam. I would love that so much. I've got such a backlog of content and of things I have to review and want to review and do videos on and go out in the woods. I can't. God, I want to so bad, and life has just been so hectic and terrible and busy right now.
Uh-huh.
I understand that completely.
Feel
I always
that,
tell everybody that the outdoor channel to me is where I go find my solitude, my rest, and sometimes even myself.
Yes, amen to that. I amen to that. I just haven't got a chance to do it. Oh, seriously though, pray for me. We're did I tell you we're building a house on? We're gonna sell our house here in Maryville and build a house. To be honest with you, like right down the road from where Dad's buried.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations.
So pray for us that we get this house sold and we're gonna build a house and pray for all the stress that comes with that.
Yeah.
Well, Travis, if
Yes.
you'd like, I can make a quick prayer for you and your family for this house build.
Hey, let's
That's
do
okay.
that, man. Let's seriously do that real quick.
Heavenly Father, we ask that you forgive us of our sins. We lift up Travis and his family, God. We pray that this house that they're trying to sell sells quickly, and they get more than what they're asking for. We pray on the new house build, Lord, that the monies come quickly, and that this house is built without delay. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen to that, my friend. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I don't take prayers lightly, and I'm just so appreciative of you guys. So
I'm just a messenger.
means a lot. Means a lot.
Glory.
I heard that, guys. Y'all be good again. I'll sit here for another 30 minutes and talk to y'all. I
I'd
just
do it
enjoy it,
for hours with you, Travis. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
dude.
Gotta
Absolutely.
end.
Well, guys, I love y'all. I'm gonna click the leave button before I stay here any longer.
Have
Y'all
a
be
great
good.
night.
You too.
Have a great night. God bless you. Yeah, it's always great having Travis on. He's so much information, and I look forward to looking at the nuclear DNA. I'm kind of a nerd in that. Whenever somebody says that something shouldn't exist, but it does, that to me just shows me how powerful and how awesome our Father really is. Right? It's not supposed to be there, but it is.
Yeah.
Our God is an awesome God.
Our God, He makes the blueprints. You know, we get to see them and live in them, and His blueprints are whatever He wants them to be. That's what's so amazing. Is He doesn't have to play by the rules. He makes the rules.
Amen.
That's the most amazing thing. I'm just when you think deep, or I think deep about it, a God that's capable of doing all that He does, and then you really think about it, or I think about me, how worthless I really am, and how much I fall short of the glory of God. And then you look at how much He truly loved me, and you, and everybody, that He came down and went through what He went through to give us eternal life. A God that can do anything that He wants to do decided to do that for us. That is unconditional love, and we are blessed to serve a God like that.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, Jess, I'll let you start walking us out, and we'll wrap up another great one with Travis. Always amazing.
Thank you for everybody for being here tonight. We wouldn't be here if you weren't here. So appreciate you all. Everybody stay healthy, stay safe. Have a great coming week, and God bless y'all. Over.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go over.
There's a little lag here. I apologize. The Abnormal Investigation Channel, shining a light in the darkness, revealing the truth about the real world we live in. Thank you, everybody, for showing up tonight and supporting the Abnormal Investigation Channel. We love you, and God bless you and your families, and have a good night.
As Randy said, we appreciate all of y'all showing up tonight. Travis is an amazing guest. He has a lot of information. I've always thought that his dad was on the forefront of the information. Such a pleasure to have him, to be able to have that kind of knowledge shared on our channel is a blessing also. Also, the last two shows, the one we done with OCST last night, Travis's tonight, will both be released out on Spotify. As soon as I can get that done, you'll be able to get the full, complete podcast of those. They will be released. So if you want to go back and re-listen while you're driving or out shopping or whatever you're doing, you will be able to do that also. We should be recording tomorrow for our Patreon release only. Randy and Jesse and I will be recording that tomorrow. I'll try to drop that just as soon as I can in the Patreon. It will be a Patreon only release. There's no way I will be able to release that on YouTube. I would have 3 strikes in 5 minutes. But that is in the works. So we will be releasing that soon. You will have to be a Patreon member to be able to see that. We set it again at the lowest, so it's not like, we're trying to make 10, 15, 20, 40 bucks off people. I think it's like $4.99, and you'll have access to all of our other photos and investigations and everything on there also. So plus that, we do not have any tiers there yet. It's all one single tier. You have access to everything at that $4.99 price. That way everybody has access to everything right now. If these Patreon shows continue to grow, we may look at doing them in the future. Seems like they're a good idea. I mean, somebody's already copied me so far, so it must have been a good idea. So You know, it's kind of like the old thing. You know, people didn't go to the Bulls to watch all the Bulls play. They went to watch Michael Jordan. And as long as he wants to be like Mike, that's okay with me because it just tells me I'm on the right path. Until next time, guys, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner. We'll catch you on the next one. God bless. Love you guys. Hunter, I love and miss you very much. And hope to see you soon, buddy. See y'all later.
Good night.
Good night.